Thank you, Alexandra. Thank you, Alexandra. Welcome to the Candidate Data Form webinar on Zoom. I am Mitzi Hubbard, the CCAP Program Administrator for the CCAP program with Community Action Partnership. Completing the Candidate Data Form, the CDF, is the first step in the process of becoming a Certified Community Action Professional, CCAP. In this webinar, you will explore each part of the CDF in great detail and gain valuable, having technical difficulty here. Oh dear. My apologies, I'm having technical difficulty and my screen just messed up. Okay. Completing the Candidate Data Form, the CDF, is the first step in the process of becoming a Certified Community Action Professional, CCAP. In this webinar, you will explore each part of the CDF in great detail and gain valuable insights on how you can complete your own first step towards national recognition as a CCAP. In observance, the next CCAP webinars will focus on the ESP, Executive Skills Portfolio, and the CCAP exam. Those dates and times will be posted on the Community Action Partnership's website and the CCAP webpage very soon. Today's presenters will guide you through the CDF process. I would like to introduce Tiffany Kaimeg, the Director of Training and Technical Assistance with the Iowa Community Action Association, and Charles H. McCann, CCAP Emeritus. At this time, Tiffany, I will turn it over to you to get us started in the CDF process.
Thank you, Mitzi, and thanks, Alex, for getting us kicked off. Hello, everyone. I'm Tiffany Kaimeg, and I recognize some familiar faces. It's great to see so many considering enrolling to become certified community action professionals this year. So hopefully we can answer all of the questions you have around the 2022 candidate data form. A few kind of preliminary notes as we get started. If you click on, there we go, I was gonna say from beginning. The Community Action Partnerships website, if you haven't visited it yet, there is a page dedicated to all things CCAP. And so hopefully you can get familiar with that. Everything that you'll need and want to know and access about the program is on that website. And the newest candidate data form that you hopefully have perused so far, but if not, you'll want to go to the website and get the most recent version. If some of your colleagues have gone through the process, they may have had a former version of the candidate data form. So definitely make sure you have the most recent one. We'll jump ahead a few slides and talk about a few kind of just pieces that you'll need to know before you actually complete the candidate data form, and for sure before you submit it. So the certification is based on a point system. So once you formally enroll in the CCAP program through the Community Action Partnership, a 3-year clock begins. And so you'd have a 3-year window to complete the whole process. And we'll walk through the pieces of the process to become a CCAP, but mainly spending time today focusing on the candidate data form. So the points that you receive as you're going through the candidacy are around 3 different areas. So the candidate data form really has you demonstrate, identify your education and experience in community action, but also outside of community action. And so you get a certain amount of points in your candidate data form around just objective measures of your education and management and leadership experience. The second area where you get points is through the executive skills portfolio. And that is more a demonstration of your skills in doing the work of community action, carrying out the vision and values of community action. And then depending on the amount of points that you get between your candidate data form and your executive skills portfolio, the combination of those scores would qualify you to sit for the CCAP examination. So with the candidate data form and the executive skills portfolio, you need at least 300 points on each of those. And then it's a max of 500 points for each of those. And the combination of scores between your candidate data form and executive skills portfolio needs to be at least 700 in order to qualify to sit for the exam. As Mitzi said, the Community Action Partnership is going to have subsequent webinars on the executive skills portfolio and CCAP examination to dive into those two pieces in more detail. So we can go to the next slide. And I would mention, and it's on here in the middle, that the candidate data form is due no later than January 19th, 2022. So you can get it in before that, but make sure it's no later than the 19th. You want to be sure you're enrolled, including payment to the partnership in the certification process prior to submitting a candidate data form. And we recommend that you complete a draft of the candidate data form and get a good idea of your anticipated points. And a candidate can very easily tell, because on the candidate data form, as you'll see in a little bit, it tells you how many points you can get for each section. We encourage you to fill that out and get a draft completed before you decide to officially enroll. Because again, remember that 3-year window, you don't want that clock to start until you feel like you're in a good position with the points on your candidate data form to have at least 300, if not, a bit more, to have a decent cushion with that piece of the process before officially enrolling. The candidate data form, the second bullet here, it's based on an honor system. So when you complete your candidate data form, it's a fillable PDF. You'll save that and submit it once you have it ready. You will type in your name to certify and include the date that all of the information in the candidate data form around your experience and education is true. Again, you'll want to make sure you have the current fillable PDF, and that's located on the partnership website. You'll receive a provisional score on your candidate data form. However, that score is not disclosed to you as a candidate. So I know some of us, that drives us crazy. We want to know our scores to everything. But with the candidate data form, you'll receive a provisional score. And then once you submit the executive skills portfolio, which is due in February, then how the scores are calculated to figure out if the combination of your score on your candidate data form and executive skills portfolio meets that qualifying threshold of 700 in order to qualify to sit for the examination. So many candidates, you'll hit that 700 plus and you'll just get notice that you qualify to sit for the exam. However, if you're within 95% of that threshold, so if your combination of scores between your candidate data form and executive skills portfolio is at 665, so you're not quite to that at least 700 qualifying score, then you as a candidate will be contacted and you will be given about 2 weeks to add to your candidate data form. So at that point, you'll have the opportunity to know your candidate data form scores in each category so you can go back and add to it, because more than likely when you submitted your candidate data form in January and then come a couple months later, you would have done some additional education or different training experience, presentations, etc., that you could add points to your candidate data form to get you to that 700. So overall, I think what you'll learn with the candidate data form is it's designed to be inclusive and not exclusive with getting candidates moving through the process. Okay, next slide, please. So when you're completing your candidate data form, just know no partial points are given in any of the categories. So for example, when it comes to employment, if you started your employment in January, so they're January to December, okay, that's 12 months, that's 1 year. If you started in January and it's November, you can't count that as 1 year, even though you're so close to that 1 year. So just know that you can't estimate, you can't round up. You'll have to round back down because no partial points are given. With scoring your candidate data form, it's staff and CCAP volunteers that do that. However, if there's an area or an entry within your candidate data form that's questionable, if it qualifies, then those are sent to the chair of the CCAP commission for a final look through. We've talked about how you advance to qualifying to sit for the exam. So that note's just in here that you need that total score of at least 700 with the candidate data form and executive skills scores combined. And you'll need to make sure that you have at least 300 points for your candidate data form before we would recommend you choosing to submit it. And I would just note here that there are quite a few optional study groups around the country that are conducted for those going through the CCAP process. And so if you're interested in learning more about those, you can contact Mitzi directly or the email address, the CCAP contact email address on the candidate data form and on the partnership's website. You can reach out to the partnership to get connected or even to a mentor if you've got other CCAPs within your state or your network. They could help as you're completing that candidate data form to give you some more insights. All right. So a candidate must submit any additional entries that don't fit within the original format of the candidate data form. So if you run out of room, or if you're in your second or third year of candidacy and you have additional content or entries you'd want to make to your candidate data form, there is an addendum page that's available on the partnership's website that you can fill out and submit. However, if it's your first time submitting your candidate data form and you happen to have an addendum page because of an overflow in a section that you have additional entries, make sure you submit it as one document to the email address you see on the screen so that your package of candidate data form materials are together. And again, it's an on your honor system with the candidate data form. And so no supporting documentation needs to be submitted unless it's requested. So there's always a chance that your candidate data form could be audited, or you could just be contacted for some clarification about an entry that you make in it. But otherwise, you don't need to have training certificates or an example of presentation materials you created, et cetera, to submit along with your candidate data form. Okay, lots of information we're going to be covering fast. So if you have questions, type them in the chat and we'll respond as we're able. But I'll go ahead and turn it over to Charles McCann to jump into the heart of the candidate data form. I'll mute myself, and then Charles, you could unmute you and we'll turn it over to you.
Okay, we're good to go. Thanks very much, Tiffany, for the overview. Now we have the candidate data form itself. And you say it's a review of the candidate data form. You could probably say it's a brief review of the candidate data form. We're going to move through it. If you have a copy of the candidate data form with you, you could refer to that. If not, you might want to take a few notes along the way. A couple of my notes and suggestions would be that once you've qualified, have submitted a qualifying candidate data form, once qualified, always qualified. So once you've met the threshold and are qualified, then you're qualified. Digital equivalents are okay. The candidate data form origin is in the 90s, and there weren't that many digital equivalents. Now there are lots of them. So any digital equivalent counts. The commission on a number of occasions has reaffirmed that. I'd like to stress that it must be received on time. It must be received on time. The partnership is not the IRS. The IRS says, if you postmark it by the due date, you're good. No, Here, the partnership has to receive it by January 19th, 2022. And since we only accept them from candidates, that means you must also have enrolled as a candidate by that date, January 19th, 2022. Once you are satisfied yourself, you have 300 points minimum, then that would be the time to enroll. I also want to emphasize in these partial years, 12 months is a year, 13 months is a year and a month. So January to January is 13 months. January to December, as Tiffany mentioned, would be 12 months. The other way, you have January counted twice. Now, the candidate data form is not just for your community action experience. It's for your lifetime experience. Your lifetime experience. How far back do you can go? Well, your lifetime. If it happened in your lifetime, then if it's in purview of your life experience, then you would include it or try to include it in the candidate data form. If there isn't an explicit field for you to fit something in your lifetime and life experience, then put it in wherever you feel is most appropriate and relevant. I think that I would caution you not to make the cut. It's not your role to decide that this doesn't go here. It's someone else's job to evaluate the candidate data form. So if it happened in your lifetime and you include it, that's exactly what you're supposed to do. Okay, it's divided into 4 sections. The first section is employment, and the number of years of management and CCAP staff, 15 points a year, maximum 150. And all the fields indicate a scoring rubric to where you can count the scores pretty much for yourself. Management means you're going to have to use our definition of management. Our definition of management. And Maria, if I caught your question, it would be for this field, we stop counting at 150. So it's up to you what you want to put, but we're going to stop counting at 150. You have to use our definition of management. And that means you can check 3 of the 5. You can make some decisions on your own. You supervise someone. You report either to the executive director or the board. You have the responsibility and intended accountability to administer a budget, not the budget, a budget, and you're a member of the executive team. Many times candidates are members of the executive team and they didn't even realize, because generally the director of the agency will select their management team at their sole discretion. So that might be a conversation with the director. So that would be 1.1. The next slide, please. 1.2, because you get credit for your life experiences. Management or executive position in organizations other than CAP agencies. Please note that even though you do get credit for these life experiences, the credit is weighted for your community action experience. Here, 8 points a year, maximum of 50 points. And then an internship in a CAA-related organization, it must be equal to 1 FTE, and you get a point a month. That would not be something that many candidates would have, but it is something that some candidates would have. And when you're finished with those 3, then you're finished with Roman numeral 1, employment. So the next slide is Roman numeral 2 for education. The way to handle 2.1 would be you start listing your degrees from the highest degree down. And you stop when you either reach 150 points or you run out of degrees. I would point out that 2 bachelor's degrees should be 200, 100 apiece, but the cap is 150. If you have an associate, that's 40, and a bachelor's, that's 100. Now you have 140. 2.2, college credits earned in management courses other than those applied to a degree you've completed. It could be something that you did after you got your degree. It could be for a degree program you didn't finish. It might be an elective that you took while you were in school, but it didn't count to your degree. I think a good rule of thumb would be, what's a management course? And to guide that, I would use section C of the body of knowledge. Section C of the body of knowledge is management. And if the course would touch on anything in section C of the body of knowledge, then by arbitrary definition, using our definition, it's management. Now, I'm going to go a little off track here for this. Here's how you're going to do it. My suggestion on how to do it. You take a plain sheet of paper and you draw a single vertical line, making 2 columns. On the left side, put any training you went to that I would call freestanding training or single focus training. Everybody's in the same room for the whole time. The instruction you get is identical, and that would be on the left side. On the right side, I would list every convention you'd ever been to. Once having done that, everything on the left side, the single focus or freestanding training, goes at numbers 2.3, 5, or 7, depending on the length of the training, the subject matter of the training, and who gave the training. 3, 5, or 7. For the conventions that you listed on the right side, that would go at numbers 2.8, 9, 10, 11, or 12, depending on whose convention it was. Most of the groups have their own line, one for NCAP, one for NASCSP, one for your state association, one for regional association, and one for related organization training, a convention such as the Head Start convention. 2 points per convention, and every breakout session lists at number 6. Every breakout session of more than half an hour goes at number 6. And that will be converted to where you will end up with a point per hour. Now, I realize that if you'd only known that someday somebody might ask you to recall some of this, you might have kept better track as you went along. So my suggestion is, if you can't remember the exact year the conference, well, it was in Boston last year, but it was been in Boston before, the first year from Boston, you can't remember the exact year, estimate the year and put a little C in front of it that stands for the Latin word circa, meaning around or about. I think, frankly, no one cares when the year of the convention was exactly. They care you went, but don't not put it just because you can't remember the exact year. That leaves number 4, specialized training. And it says see list on next slide. So let's look at the list on the next slide. Can we get the next slide, please? There it is. If you went to any of these training events, then you would get the points that are indicated. For some of them, it shows it's either one or the other. You can't get both. If you can't double dip, I guess is really what that's saying. And that is on those, that's a slide is reproduced from page 26 of the actual candidate data form. Some of these trainings events are dormant, but there's still people in community action who may have attended. So the next slide, please. We've covered that and that. So now it's 2 Roman numerals down, 2 to go. Roman numeral 3, involvement in national, state, regional, local activities. Now, I'm sure you know what organization it is you work for. 3.1 would be an instructional presentation to a CAP organization other than your own. So if you gave a training to the CAP agency next door, if you gave it to the state, regional, or national conference, it would count. Instructional presentations to non-CAP organizations is 3.2. 3.3 and 3.4 mirror 1 and 2, except instead of an instructional presentation, you would have been a discussion leader or panelist. 3.3 for a CAP organization other than your own. 3.4, a panelist, discussion leader for a non-CAP organization. 3.5, services on peer review team, public policy development, or advanced educational and training opportunities. Do see the instructions. This is also outside of your agency. Peer review would be if you perhaps are working, if you do not work for the state office and the state association. And Josh, I know that you were here. But if you don't work for the state association, but you're still participating in the agenda for the state meeting, then that would be an example. If you're working on a group dealing with public policy development, say on predatory lending or gerrymandering, that would be public policy development. And then peer review, if you're asked to go in and do a peer review of another agency. Okay, next slide. Publication of articles on CAP matters. 1 point for a letter, 2 points for an op-ed piece, 3 points for a published article. My notion would be, these are easy points and you can still get them easily between now and January the 19th. Write some letters to the editor, write some op-ed pieces. If you all have an agency newsletter, maybe start writing some articles for it. So I see 3.6 as relatively easy points. If any of you have ever been on a CAP board, 3.7. If you've ever been on a state, regional, or national CAP board, that's 3.8. And a membership of another human service organization. The example is the United Way, but think broadly. I was on my church board, so that had been on my candidate data form. We don't call them human service activities, we call them mission activities, but it's the same thing. So think broadly, human service organization board of directors. Think broadly. Don't not put it because you don't think it goes there. It's not your role to evaluate. It's your role to present. In the next slide, please. Yes, very good, Tiffany. Example, State Head Start Association Board. Roman numeral 4, involvement of publishing. Instructional materials. If you haven't written a manual yet, I would suggest you write one. If you haven't done a PowerPoint yet, do one. What will these manuals and PowerPoints be about? Anything community action. It can be about your job. It can be how to do your job. It can be about the different role your agency plays in the community. Whatever you do, a book, article, PowerPoint, manual, all those count. And there'd be time to do that between now and January. Instructional presentations on CAP management for non-CAP association, 5 points per event. And the candidate data form also calls attention that that is a 30-minute presentation. If you haven't been to the Lions Club, the Optimist Club, the Rotary Club, one of the service clubs, my suggestion is do that. Maybe they don't want a 30-minute presentation. Maybe they only want 20 minutes. Well, my suggestion would be you do your 20 minutes and the question and answer period, both formal and informal, take up the other 10 minutes. And do count the informal. Usually, if I ever give a presentation to that group, there's always one that comes up at the end and says, I didn't want to ask this in front of the whole group, but then they ask their question. Finally, involvement in non-CAP related association management organizations. This would be if you join a professional organization of some kind, say the American Association of Professional Women, the American Management Association, non-CAP related association management organizations. So we've been through this fast, way too fast, but we've been through it fast. But a little bit of an introduction about each field on the candidate data form. And the suggestion has already been made that you pencil it in and count up your points to give a baseline and then start working in areas to get additional points. When you hit the 300 is when you apply. Now, it was mentioned 300 minimum candidate data form, 300 minimum portfolio, but 700 combined. If you get them 300 plus 300, that's only 600. You need 100 additional points. My suggestion would be you get as many of those additional points as you can on the candidate data form. So even though a qualifying candidate data form is 300, don't quit there. Keep going to as many points as you can get on your candidate data form. So that would conclude my presentation. So do I give it back to Tiffany?
Let's see.
Thank you, Charles. Thank you, Tiffany. We are on slide 16, the addendum. The CDF addendum page, you can download a copy of this form from the CCAP webpage under the CDF drop-down menu. The CDF addendum should be used if you have more entries to add and there's not enough space on the PDF fillable CDF form. Use this addendum to record your additional information. Begin by adding your name and date to the form. The form is divided into 2 questions, and only in question number 1, there are subsections of each category in relation to the CDF, just as Charles went over. Question number 1 mark the heading and the subsection of the category to which this page refers. Section 1, years of experience as management executive. Section 2, education. Section 3, involvement in national, regional, state, and local community action agency activities. Section 4, involvement in publishing and training and in association management activities outside the community action agency. Number 2, enter all additional data for each entry under that item number. These sections correlate to the CDF form. In each section, mark only the category area that you will be adding that information to, and following, add a description of your information to question number 2 in the space provided for that entry. Remember, use only one addendum per entry. Do not combine all of your additions onto one addendum. When you complete the addendum form, scan it, send it in with your CDF form. For prior year candidates, use the same process using the addendum when adding information to your current CDF form for each category where you want to add more points. But remember, only use one addendum form per entry. Now we can go to slide 17. Much of what has been discussed today can be found in the Guide to Understanding the CDF form. This guide is meant to help you understand the intent and purpose of the CDF. It provides an overview of what is contained in the CDF so you can understand the larger picture. It does not contain all the necessary explanatory details for each section in the CDF itself. When you are ready and understand the CDF process, then it is time for you to download the CDF form from the CCAP webpage and start your CCAP journey. Here are some helpful reminders. Candidacy lasts for 3 years. Many candidates become a CCAP in the first year. You can retake the exam during your candidacy if necessary. The program is designed to provide opportunities for persons who have come up through the ranks, as well as those who are newer to community action. The next slide. You can choose a CCAP pathway mentor to work with. Refer to the CCAP webpage for a list of trained mentors from across the nation. All of the forms you will need are on that CCAP webpage. Here is a screenshot of the CCAP webpage drop-down menu. Okay, we're on slide 20. Just to recap, the CDF is a fillable PDF form located on the CCAP webpage. After completing the CDF form, save it to your computer and submit from there. The CDF guide will help you understand the CDF and how it works. The CDF addendum is for you to use when needing more space to add entries in the future candidacy years. CCAP does belong after your name. If you have any questions, go ahead and use the chat box. Charles, Tiffany, or I will be able to answer any of your questions. As you're typing your questions in, if you have any, this wraps up our session today. I want to thank Tiffany and Charles for their time and dedication, as they are both CCAP commissioners, and for the valuable detailed information that they helped guide you through the CDF process today. I also want to thank you for attending today's workshop. If you have any questions or need additional assistance, please contact me at your earliest convenience. mhubbard@communityactionpartnership.com. Just remember, the deadline for the CDF form is January 19th, 2022. Have we got any questions in the chat box?
Yeah, someone asked, for published articles, do blog posts count?
Any digital equivalent. I would suggest you include it in someone else who evaluates it. But I think you can make a compelling case that, that it would be appropriate. So my suggestion is, if you did it, include it.
Are there any other questions out there?
Tiffany, would you concur with that suggestion?
Yes, absolutely. And I definitely think outside the box with all the social media and digital ways that we now do a lot of communication about the work and impact of community action. So, and if you're responsible for helping put together your annual report, radio and TV interviews, so think big.
I'd like to address Dr. Hall's question. And let's see, Dr. Hall, you're from Passaic, New Jersey, I noticed. Are you acquainted with Al Kelly down in Bridgeton? Is that one of your colleagues? Well, I guess there's no way for you to really to answer me. No, if you're only in 2 months, your designation would an informal designation. You are a prospect, and prospects don't just, because you have to have at least 24 months in community action before you can become a candidate. So you're a prospect. Prospects don't just sit around and twiddle their thumbs waiting for time to pass. Prospects have things that they need to do. And I'm making a note now to send you the prospects brochure that outlines what they are. One of the things would be to pencil in your candidate data form to kind of get a baseline on where you are. And then avail yourself of the many training opportunities that are available throughout the Community Action Network to shore yourself up and get additional points, so that when the 2 years is up, you will have not just a qualifying candidate data form, but a much higher than qualifying candidate data form. And if these answers are okay, is that sufficient, satisfactory?
Charles, I think we had another question right there.
Where that's a question to you. When do you get the PowerPoint? When do they get the PowerPoint?
Oh,
unless there was another question as well.
There was above it. It's where would a place be for continuing education for a license?
I can take that one, Charles. Where would you put continuing education for a license? And I know one area in particular that talks about CEUs is in section 2, education, number 3, so point 3. Section 2.3, management courses. It talks about if you did not receive college credit, it could be courses which you received continuing education. Courses must meet for a minimum of 12 hours to count there. So you just need to watch close, and there could be other area where you can put that as well. And you'll find that there could be a couple sections, this is in general for everybody, that one of your experiences could fit. So again, you put it where you think it best fits. And then if you fill up another section, you know, that might be a differentiation too on where you place things within your candidate data form. But watch close if there's a minimum number of hours of attendance that qualifies.
If it won't fit in the section that says 12 hours, you might check, as Tiffany suggests, number 2.5 or 7.
And I will answer the PowerPoint presentation. Yes, we can send that link to you, but you will also be able to find it on the CCAP webpage under webinars. I think we had another question come down on the bottom. Tiffany, would you like to take that question at the bottom?
So the question is, do presentations, trainings, training for program specific things count, or does it have to include community action in general? I think it depends on the section in the candidate data form, because there are things that need to be community action related. And then there are other areas where it doesn't say it has to be community action related. So again, like Charles had mentioned, when it comes to different trainings you've attended and you have your listing, there would be different sections that you would put it if it has to do with community action or outside of community action.
Community action related, my suggestion would be to interpret that anything that affects people in poverty is community action related.
We had one more question at the bottom.
Does being a member, go ahead, Charles.
I was going to ask, what kind of a coalition do you have in mind?
County emergency management.
Well, I think that depends on the kind of training that your coalition would receive. You may not get credit just for the fact that you're in the coalition, but the coalition must be doing something and receiving training and doing things. So I would think about what your coalition does and see if that's a fit, and the training the coalition receives and seeing whether that's a fit.
And you might look specifically at section 4, involvement in training and association management activities outside of community action. And the third piece in that talks about involvement in non-CAA related association management organizations at the local, state, or national level. I think county emergency management involvement could fit there. Page 25 of the candidate data form.
There's also something here on page 11 that talks about management related workshops sponsored by a professional or trade association. So if you're receiving that kind of training, as Tiffany says, one must look at the title of what's being asked. It doesn't all say community action. Sometimes it just says management training. I think that Clint, and nice to see you here. If you believe, I guess Clint, that I would count it if I could answer the following question if it were asked to you. Why do you think being a village council member fills a human service need? If you can answer the question, then I would include it. Because isn't that where you're going? And the board of another human service organization? Yeah. If you can answer the question, why do you think that's a human service organization? And you can satisfy yourself with the answer, then my suggestion would be to include it and let someone else evaluate it.
Okay.
Tiffany, don't let me get too far. Don't get me too far away from that. Would you concur with that?
I would concur, yes.
Okay, does anybody else have any questions? If not, this will conclude our webinar on CDF. We want to thank you for attending today's workshop, and we look forward to seeing you at the Community Action Partnership's annual conference in New York City in 2022. Thank you for attending today. Goodbye.